All right, good morning, everyone. Or it's morning where I am, and I think on the beach where Gavi is, it slid into afternoon. And we were
Absolutely.
having a conversation this morning about the state of the world and whether you think the state of the world is trending positively or negatively, or your politics are in line with what's happening or your politics are not. There are a lot of worried people, and there are a lot of people that have this sense that things are getting worse, not better. And worry tends to be this thing that you're paying interest on an experience that hasn't happened yet. That worry is an expression of fear of something that may or may not happen. And your host David will tell you that I am a recovering worrier in the entirety. I worry a lot, and I don't think I'm alone. I think there are people out there that worry too and would like to worry less. And so the question I'm posing to Gavi today is kind of a specific one. Gavi, what are three things people can do in their lives to make sure that they are living positively and not worrying? Because part of the thing is that worrying is not active. What are actions people can take? What are ways they can change their thinking to worry
Well,
less?
so as one before we address this interesting question, it just goes to show you that friends, true friends that can have a conversation about, before we went online, that could be very tumultuous amongst me, other people, but yet we still talk and still wouldn't do this podcast. So it's a good sign of a good friendship.
I'm very
Um,
fortunate.
Worry. Listen, I'll put my hand up. I'm not a big worrier. It's not said I worry. Um, I'll put it this way. Let's start off. I've I remember there was a phrase that says worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but you actually you actually go nowhere, right? So why do I say that? I think the first thing I would say is be honest with yourself. What are you worried about? Are you blowing it out of proportion? Now, not to diminish a fear, a worry, right?
Right.
That's nothing. But I think if you one is realistic and make that worry something that you can grab hold of, right? Let's give an example. I'm worried about the end of the world. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it, right? The end of the world's going to happen, right? If that's the case, everyone's dead, right? So is that a realistic worry? Okay. So let's break it down to something that you is bite size, right? So I'm worried about the economy. Okay, that's something that's a genuine concern of everybody, right? Whether you're the wealthy people, you're still going to worry about your standard of living if you're living with yachts and planes around the world. Are you able to keep that standard of living? Right, as opposed to someone who has no money and worried about where am I going to get my cheap baked beans and toast, right? So reality, let's be honest. Where are you, and where does it relate to in your world? That's number one, I would say. Second thing is stop worrying about everyone else's problems. Okay. We sometimes like, oh my gosh, David's, got a better life than me, and David's got a more wealthier life than me, and David's got more successful life than me. And oh, and worry about yourself first of all. Okay. And the third thing I would say is, what are you
Taking
really
notes. I'm taking notes.
you taking notes?
Yeah, I'm reaching for a notepad here. So,
Just listen to the
as many of our
podcast on
viewers may
YouTube.
be doing right now.
I have to say, listen back to the podcast on the YouTube channel, and then take notes. And then the third thing I would say, just top of my head, is right. What are you worried about? Am I really worried about that? And what am I really worried about? Right? This sounds very. What am I worried about? What am I really worried about? And what can I do about it? Right? Example. Sometimes we blow it out of proportion. Welcome to humanity. Okay. What am I really, really, oh, I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. Really? Are you really worried about that? And if you worry about something, let's write it down and say, okay, what if that worry can I deal with right now? And I can step by step to overcome it.
One thing you and I were talking about, and I think this plays into the concept of what am I worried about and whether it's a big problem and how to make it a management problem, is most I shouldn't speak for everybody else, but most of my worry, and I think most of a lot of
Go on, go
people's
for it. You
worry.
are the spokesman. You are the spokesman for the average man. Come on. I'm just the agony aunt here.
Okay. So, but I think that a lot of times our worry is engendered by the things we read or listen to or see on social media because we live in such a crowded world that to get our attention, things have to be blown out of proportion, right? That you said something that I think is very relevant that in order to get people's attention, a politician or the media might use the worst possible example, right? And there's a danger in thinking that that worst possible example is how everything is. So sometimes I think our worries are elevated, they're inflated by where we're getting our information that's causing them in the first place.
Yes. I'll bring a story, as you know, I always bring a story. The story goes as follows: the teacher in the class sets an assignment and says today's assignment is to come up with the seven wonders of the world. All right. So I know you give 20 minutes, and after 20 minutes, the teacher says, everyone finished? And everyone raises their hand and they're like, okay, let's discuss of what we felt together as the group. Is the seven wonders of the world. So they go around the world, go around the classroom, and they get the usual one: the Great Wall of China, the pyramids, the Grand Canyon, whatever it is. And there is an agreement amongst 99% of the class. And uh, okay, of course, in this story, you have the teacher who's a bit more aware of it, sees little Johnny in the background, not even agreeing with, everything else. And so she turns around to Johnny and says, Johnny, I see you may not disagree. You disagree with majority of thing. Well, what's your list say? And he's like, no, 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 no. She's like, no, no. What's your list? And reluctantly, he goes, okay, going one through seven. My seven wonders of the world is hearing, seeing, tasting, feeling, reality, the five senses plus two more things. Right? Why do I bring this story? Is that reality is that worry, sometimes we worry our perspective. It's there are certain things that we as in the media or whatever is say they can use to get a reaction. But if you kind of like I said to you before, like take a step back. Really, really? Is that what you're going to focus on? Yes, it is an issue, but how's that going to affect me? And therefore, to how counteract worry is appreciate what you do have, right? So, yes, there is at this moment in time huge political divide. Okay, huge. Again, I'm not saying who's right and wrong. That's not for this podcast,
But
or
it's huge.
it
And
is
there's a lot of
huge.
anxiety and
A lot
worry
of
about
it,
it.
I think, is people standing on egos, standing on principles, not willing to come to the middle, right? But even then, the average person, let's be honest, we can only hope and pray that our leaders will one day get come to realization that they represent humanity and how society needs help, and they have to sometimes take a step back and look how the average person they represent really needs help. Right. So they're
Right.
the rules, they're the holes and the society, the not society, the infrastructure of democracy. Right. We can worry about it. You can, go to the pub and you can talk about it, but the reality is you come home, you have to live with your reality. So how do you kind of make amends of stop worrying is, okay, I may not have money to buy X, Y, and Z and go on holiday this year, but I have money to go and buy bread. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Because I need something to make myself live. And if
And
I'm
so
living,
it's
what else can I do as a society to make my life a bit more manageable so I don't go crazy? Yes, there are things I like to, but
so the
what is
first
it on
step
your seven
is
list?
so
Or
the
what's
first
on
step
your,
is happiness is not necessarily having what you want, it's wanting what you've got.
yes,
Yeah,
again, that worry, again, not to discard worry. It's welcome to humanity and growing up. They're always worried about you. Listen, you're worried about your children, even when they're old enough and got the, they've got kids and they're established, you're still going to worry about it. If you buy a brand new car, you worry, they don't get dirty, or bang or twing until you've for 5 years and just a car to get me from A to B. You're still going to worry about, you know, um, normal things. The hot water tank doesn't go in the middle of my shower, right? Or that if I go for a jog in the morning, that there's no Lego pieces, on the carpets. I don't wake up my other members of the family. These are genuine worries. But are you worried about the nuclear war? Okay, it's a worry, but what can you do about it? So I would say be realistic. Be honest. I am worried, but just to kind of bring it down a peg, right?
and then you're talking about breaking your worry, like what am I worried about? What am I really worried about? Right. And we've covered those. What I'm really worried about is usually a smaller piece, and
Yes.
that's the piece you can take action on.
Like I'll tell you
And
one thing. When people come to me for therapy,
yeah,
they'll say they're worried about X, Y, and Z. And through the conversation you have with them, most times it's not even the issue they came in for was the real issue.
right.
Right? So sometimes you're worried about it. Find a friend. David, we've known each other long enough. Humor me, listen to me. What do you think? Right? And if you're honest enough, you turn around and ask the question, Gavi, really? Come on.
Yeah. So I think, and then the third thing you mentioned, and I think this is so important, put the big fear in perspective, right? Put the big fear in perspective. Find the piece that's really important, what you're really worried about, that big fear is expressing, right? And like you talked about, people that come in therapy, that big fear and this fear they're actually feeling are very different sometimes. And then the third thing you said, and I think this is the part where so much of us get hung up, so many of us, sorry, that get hung up, is this, what are you going to do about it? Because there's sort of this sense that the worrying is what I'm doing about it, right? But the worrying is the rocking chair that takes you nowhere. It's the motion that substitutes for movement, right?
Yes.
So when you're working with people, how do you nudge them into taking action? Like for me, what I do is I write something down and I say, I'm going to get this done. And then it's on a list and I can check it off. And for me, that's a very meaningful experience to check something off a list. So when I can break something down into pieces, and as my friend, you've helped me do that sometimes, right? The next thing I do is I check that off the list. How do you recommend people break their big worries down into smaller, actionable items?
So two things. As you know, I truly believe the best friend is the pen and the paper. Write down. Right? That's number one. Reason being, similar to you, is that when you write something down, it becomes more concrete.
Right.
That's number one. But the real thing I always tell people, and I believe in this, this is my personal belief system, is that if you can tell me your challenge, and again, I'm not knocking. I know people take things
No.
take things to extreme, but if you can explain a belief system, a worry, a concern, a anything, you can if you can bring it down and put it into layman's terms in one or two sentences, then you know what you're really worried about. And the reason I say that is due to the fact that people, I'm worried about, but can you explain to me why you're worried about it? Or what is it you're really fear about? If you push them and they think about it, sometimes it's not really because they're just either repeating what they've heard in the vacuum of the outside noise, Well, or when you push them, it's not really the issue. Like I said to you before, it's something else that's bothering you, and it's easier to turn around and say, well, it's a worry or it's a fear, whatever. No, it's not. Maybe it's something completely different. So
Let me
be
interrupt you for
honest.
a second.
Yes,
So
please.
I think there's something you're saying here that's very important. Um, and that is that you said when I asked what can people do, right, to take action, and you said there's two things. The first thing is do nothing because you realize it's not really a problem.
That's a
That
very that's yes, but most
that
people are willing to do that.
right. That one of the things you can do is nothing because it's not a problem that needs solving. And sometimes and I have a phrase, a one that I use all the time. This is a solution without a problem, right? That sometimes we are so invested in coming up with a solution, we're solving problems that don't exist for us or for our employer or everything else. So one thing you can do is recognize either there's nothing you can do about it or it's really not a problem and do nothing.
Or you sleep on it.
Right.
Like I always tell my wife, let's sleep on it before we make a decision.
So, what about the things that we do where we're like, okay, this is a problem. It's a legitimate worry. I've thought about it, I've slept on it, and now I need to do something. And I've done my writing, I've written it down. Now, what's the next step for me? How do I get started?
So depending what the issue is, if, for example, if it's financial,
Right,
then go to someone who is knowledgeable about that issue,
right,
right? Because reality is that they may come to you and give you advice because that's their expertise,
right,
right? Um, the second thing I'll say to you is accept that maybe take a little bit of time. It
right,
won't be solved overnight. Okay, some of them can be,
right,
you know. Um, thirdly, and I say this all the time to my clients, I can't heal you. You have to heal yourself, but you have to be totally honest. What do I mean by honest? Honest means it may take time, may not be able to solve it, or you maybe have to be totally honest with your life and change certain things. Are you willing to do that for the greater good, or are you going to carry this worry with you all along? I'm using worry in this just because you're asking me that, right? And sometimes that sorts out the boys from the men, right? Like we all can help ourselves by making ourselves better, but are we willing to confront it? Are we willing to do the discipline? Are we willing to ask the people? Are we willing to, you know, are we willing to change?
right,
So, and a lot of people who are willing to do these things worry less because the process is very healing and cathartic. Right? You meet the people, you learn to look at the picture bigger, a bit bigger. You get your patience, takes time. You know, again, I'm not knocking people who worry, but a lot of people who worry, they're just doing it so it seems like they're doing something. Oh, I'm going to complain, blah, blah, blah. What are
right.
you doing? What a part solution are you going to do?
Because
You
it's
know,
not actually doing something, it's
actually doing it. It's like
feeling
sitting in the
like you're
rocking
doing
chair.
something.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing nothing. And two other things I would say: stop blaming other people. And
Absolutely.
third of all, last of all, and I've said this last week: be kind to yourself.
So I think that one of the things I do sometimes, and we have conversations, and I'm blessed in having you as a friend, is I take the what I call the Gavi wisdom, and then
Copyright.
I try to think of something that people can do at the end of that. And so for me, when you listen to this podcast, and it's thrown up on the YouTube channel, and to make us more than just a pair of talking heads, one thing I'd like us to do, I'd like you to consider out there as a listener, is think of some things you're worried about and pick two. And pick one you can just do nothing about because it's not really a problem. And on the other, find that person you can talk to about it who has the knowledge that you need. Because one of the things I've learned in my own life is that most people want to help you.
Yes.
That if you were really honest and say, you know something I don't, you have a skill I don't have, I want the benefit of your experience. Most people, if they are able, they will help you.
Totally.
And so I think on that, we are going to send Gavi back to the beach there, and I'm going to wait for inspiration to strike. And we are going to thank you, loyal listener, for listening to us.
Hope you
And
have less worries tonight.
yeah, may you have
Or
less
wisdom.
worries tonight. Signing off.
God bless.